Hi everyone, I'm meteorologist Gary Woodall, and welcome to this episode of the Mid-South Weather Musings. In yesterday's episode, we took a look back at April 26th in weather history and looked at a couple of significant tornado events which occurred on that date in previous years. Today we're going to take a look back at one of the significant weather events, not only in Mid-South weather history, but U.S. weather history as well. And that was the terrible outbreak which occurred 9 years ago today, April 27th of 2011. We'll take a look at some of the statistics from that outbreak and talk about why it was such a deadly event, not only for the Mid-South, but across a good portion of the southeastern U.S. as well. Then we'll take a look at the future. Unfortunately, we do have severe weather in the forecast for Tuesday night and Wednesday coming up, so we'll break down that severe weather outlook as well. April 27th was a date that will live in weather history and weather infamy in the Mid-South and across a good portion of the U.S. It was part of a 3-day outbreak of tornado activity from the southern plains across the southeast and up towards the east coast of the U.S., but April 27th was the most significant and the most deadly day of this sequence. On April 27th, we had a total of 216 tornadoes that were reported, and those tornadoes resulted in 316 fatalities, the first time in decades that we had had that many deaths from a tornado event. There were 15 violent tornadoes, 11 EF4s and 4 EF5s, which occurred with this outbreak. And these are very long-lived tornadoes as well. The average path length for the EF4 and EF5 tornadoes was an amazing 66 miles. This also marked the first date in recorded history in which 2 EF5s occurred in Mississippi on the same day. Those were the tornado north of Philadelphia, Mississippi, and the tornado which tragically struck Smithville, Mississippi in Monroe County. The Smithville, Mississippi tornado was one of the deadliest tornadoes on record for the Mid-South. It touched down at approximately 3:44 p.m. on the afternoon of the 27th and was one of the 4 EF5 tornadoes that occurred during this outbreak. The tornado resulted in a total of 23 fatalities. 16 of those deaths occurred in the immediate Smithville area. This was an extremely powerful tornado. The damage survey found a home foundation that was partially dislodged and pulled up as the tornado came across. The tornado also picked up an SUV. Actually, it struck the water tower back here in the background and landed here probably a quarter to a third of a mile away. So just a horrendously violent tornado that moved through. Now, this supercell thunderstorm earlier produced a long track tornado across portions of Calhoun, Chickasaw, and into western Monroe counties, and this was a significant tornado as well. A lot of damage. It was an EF3 and wound up producing 4 fatalities along its track. Now, we talk about supercell thunderstorms and the fact that they are usually can be long-lived, and in some cases may last for 2 or 3 hours in some cases. Well, one of the April 27th, 2011 supercells was an extreme example of that. The storm actually developed in the early afternoon hours down in east central Mississippi, moved across eastern Mississippi, moved across all of Alabama, moved across northwest and north central and northeastern Georgia, and finally dissipated over 6 hours later up in western North Carolina. A number of significant tornadoes were produced by this storm, including the Tuscaloosa-Birmingham tornado, which caused so many fatalities in the central portion of Alabama. So why was this such a deadly outbreak? Well, the most obvious reason is just the strength of the tornadoes themselves. Again, numerous long track tornadoes, many strong to violent tornadoes, EF2, EF3, and then again the 15 violent tornadoes which occurred. The storms were also very fast-moving. They moved at speeds in excess of 50 miles an hour, so there wasn't a lot of time necessarily between warnings were issued and when the storms actually hit or affected an area. And as a result, some folks might have waited too long to try to take shelter. There were stories of people waiting until they actually could see the tornadoes to try to take shelter, and as fast as they were moving, that just did not give a lot of time for people to get into safe locations. Now, there was a complicating factor with this outbreak as well. Early in the morning, in the pre-dawn hours of the 27th, a line of significant severe storms and a number of tornadoes moved across this same area, in particular heavily affecting Alabama. This resulted in widespread power outages across the area. A number of the large metal transmission towers were damaged or destroyed by those early morning storms. And so people, again, widespread power outages, so people were not able to watch TV or monitor their commercial media. The outages also affected NOAA weather radio transmitters in the area, either the transmitters themselves, power to the transmitters, or the communications to the transmitters as well. So this really hampered the warning system as well. All these factors combined to produce one of the deadliest, one of the darkest days in the Mid-South and Southeast weather history. So taking a look ahead now for April 28th and 29th, Tuesday and Wednesday, fortunately we're not expecting anything like we saw back in 2011, but we do have severe weather potentially in the forecast. Here's the severe storm outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. This again is for April 28th, Tuesday, through the morning of April the 29th. And we do have over portions of Arkansas an enhanced risk, 3 out of 5 on the Storm Prediction Center's outlook scale. A good portion of the Mid-South, though, in fact, all the Mid-South basically, under either a slight or a marginal risk for severe storms. 2 out of 5 and 1 out of 5 on SPC's outlook scale. It looks now like thunderstorms will develop during the late afternoon, maybe the early evening hours from the southern plains up into the mid-Mississippi Valley region. The storms then should move and build to the south and east and southeast and should move into the Mid-South area during the overnight hours Tuesday night, maybe extending into the very early pre-dawn hours on Wednesday morning. So this looks to be, again, another overnight thunderstorm event for us here in the Mid-South. One of the big questions is going to be how much instability, how much fuel will we have for the thunderstorms by the time they get into our area. And as of now, it looks like the fuel supply will be sort of dwindling or decreasing for the storms as they come through. And that's why we have, again, only the marginal to the slight risk, with the enhanced risk out to the west where the fuel will be the strongest for the storms. So breaking it down a little further, the tornado outlook for Tuesday and Wednesday, very low tornado threat overall with these storms. And the greatest threat that there is, again, from the southern plains up through the mid-Mississippi Valley region. It does look like wind will be the primary threat for us here in the Mid-South. The greatest threat for wind will be basically along and west of the Mississippi River. But again, we will have some wind threat across all of the Mid-South, with the greatest threat further to the west where we had the enhanced risk area. Hail should not be quite as much of a threat, but the greatest threat will be again over Arkansas and then continuing on to the west from there. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Mid-South Weather Musings. We hope you enjoyed the broadcast this evening. And again, keep the victims from the 2011 outbreak. It changed a lot of lives and affected a lot of people across the Mid-South and all across the Southeast. So please continue to keep them in your thoughts. Something like this, even though it's been 9 years, it still is a tremendous, life-changing event, and certainly need to keep all those people in our thoughts. If you liked what you heard this evening and liked what you saw, give us a like on YouTube, subscribe to us. If you're on Facebook, be sure and follow our page. That way you'll be notified for future episodes of the Mid-South Weather Musings. And if there are any subjects, any topics that you'd like us to cover, be sure and mention those in the comments section as well. So thank you again for watching, and everybody keep safe.